Here's what I think could happen as a result of a recent statistic that I saw the Avalanche Foundation post recently. And even though nothing I say is financial advice, and even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything, this is just purely my perspective. But again, the Avalanche Foundation recently made a post saying how there's over 600 projects in the Avalanche ecosystem. They say it's growing, and also on top of that, they say that it's built to scale. Now, what do I think could happen as a result of this? I think that there could very well be a hypothetical domino effect. Let me explain what I mean by this. First of all, one thing that I do know, allegedly to my understanding, is that when it comes to AVAX, which is Avalanche's native token, all transaction fees are burned. So basically it's removed from circulation, right? Again, these transaction fees. But what could happen as a result of more projects being, I guess, in the Avalanche ecosystem? Now, if there's more projects, hypothetically, that could result in terms of more total value locked, more TVL, basically. And if, let's say, there's more activity going on, if there's more transactions, what happens? Again, like I mentioned before, allegedly, to my understanding, transaction fees are burned. So if there's more projects, more activity, more of AVAX being burned, why is that a bad thing? In theory, right? The less of a supply of something, the more rare it could hypothetically become. Am I saying that Avalanche is rare? No, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, if I just take a look at it logically speaking, if let's say there's 10 shoes and suddenly the shoe collection became 5, it became more rare. That's the way I take a look at it. So when people like to say, well, who cares about Avalanche posting this random statistic saying how there's over 600 projects in the Avalanche ecosystem? Okay, I get it. At first glance, it may not matter that much. But when I take a look at what domino effects it could hypothetically create as a hypothetical result, I don't view it as such a bad thing. This is just personally for me. Avalanche, in terms of AVAX, right, the transaction fees are just not that big to begin with. There's just not this issue where it has sky-high gas fees, unlike some other projects out there. However, it doesn't really bother me because, yeah, sure, the transaction fees may not be that much, but if there's more and more projects, and if there's more and more AVAX being burned through these transaction fees, slowly but surely, sometimes we see a hypothetical reduction in terms of the supply. But this is all just purely my perspective, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything. But I'm just saying, when it comes to that statistic that I saw recently, I don't think it's necessarily such a bad thing. And again, AVAX being below $10 as of right now, the longer it stays below $10, it doesn't make me more upset. If anything, I'm actually a little bit happy because even though this may sound very counterintuitive, I am a fan when it comes to this project. And because my hypothetical intent is $2 cost average, the lower something is, I'm not saying I want it to be that way forever, but the lower something is for dollar cost averaging purposes, personally in my perspective, the more I wouldn't complain actually. That's the thing. It's like, for instance, imagine if I'm a shoe collector and I walked inside, let's say, Foot Locker or something like that, and the limited edition shoes randomly had a discount. Would I complain about that? Now, that's an entirely different situation when compared to this, but I'm just saying, if I'm a shoe collector, I wouldn't be upset with that situation. But again, this is just my mindset. And the thing about AVAX is that because it's below $10 and because it actually didn't hold up so good, it actually means that as of right now, it is over 3 times lower than where it was back in September 2025. Which again sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but imagine if AVAX held up a lot better. Let's say it held up at around $20, right? Okay, if it maybe goes back to around $33, it's a little bit boring, but because as of right now it's below $10, if it could just go back to around $33, which is a big if, I mean, we'll wait and see, but I'm just saying, if it could go back to that, again, we're over 3 times lower than that. One thing I do know for sure is that Bitcoin is not over 3 times lower than its all-time high currently as we speak. But yeah, besides that point, does anyone think that September of 2025 was so good for AVAX? It actually wasn't. A lot of people actually didn't consider it that good because if we take a look at it, actually back in March of 2024, it was around $60. So if we take a look at September of 2025, that was almost 2 times lower than where it was back in March of 2024. So it wasn't even considered that good at that point. And yet still we're over 3 times lower than a point in which wasn't even considered that good to begin with. Now, if we want to take things just from a different perspective, and we take a look at, let's say, AVAX compared to where it once was in March of 2024, at one point, we're actually over 6 times lower than that. I don't need AVAX to ever go back to its all-time high. Like, if we take a look at AVAX's all-time high, it is around $146. But yeah, that's a lot. I mean, does it ever really need to go back to that point? Personally, because of this pullback as of right now, I don't need it to ever go back to that point in order to be happy, just because of the amount that AVAX had a pullback. But even besides that, I don't mind waiting. Now, I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but the least of my concerns is waiting. What I don't like seeing is that if a project doesn't do anything, then I don't really want to wait anymore. I don't mind waiting though. Waiting for me is like a whatever type of feeling, like in a sense where I knew that I was going to have to wait for quite a while anyways. So why would I complain about a situation in which I felt like I'd probably have to experience anyways? Like when I went into this space, I went into the frame of mind where I knew that I probably have to wait for quite a while, in which case I'm having to wait for quite a while as of right now. And again, why would I complain about that? It's like me, for instance, running a marathon and complaining that I'm running a marathon. How does that make sense? If I don't want to run it, then I wouldn't go to the marathon, right? But if I went to the marathon, then I voluntarily decided to do so. So when it comes to this space, I kind of view it no different. Like I'm not going to complain about voluntarily entering into a space that I voluntarily decided to do so, right? This is just my mindset. But again, I don't mind waiting because I'm still going to have to live my life anyways. Like for instance, 2026, 2027, and so on, 2028, 2029, 2030, etc. So I don't mind waiting, but I just don't like it if a project doesn't update, and I also don't really like it if a project doesn't really do anything. Those are the traits that I don't want to believe anymore if I do see that when it comes to a project. But when it comes to Avalanche, they still constantly update, and also I take a look at the Avalanche ETFs, which there are 3-spot Avalanche ETFs in the US, by the way. Like I even mentioned this in my previous videos, but just in case someone didn't watch it, I'm just going to refresh a little bit of what happened to Avalanche lately. We saw Bitwise's Avalanche ETF on the New York Stock Exchange. We saw also Grayscale's Avalanche ETF on NASDAQ, and also furthermore on NASDAQ as well. We also see VanEck Avalanche ETF. So yeah, when it comes to that, sure, as of right now, Avalanche may not be doing the best, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's such a bad thing. And even not too long ago, what I've seen when it comes to Avalanche lately, and again, I even mentioned this, but I'm just going to refresh everyone's memory in case someone didn't watch it, is that how almost 1% as of late that I saw of AVAX holdings was through ETFs, right, in the US. So I do find that to be pretty impressive, actually, at the end of the day. I get it. It's kind of like a drop in the ocean, some people like to say, because almost 1%, they're like, okay, who cares about that? But we have to consider just how relatively new these Avalanche ETFs are that I mentioned before. It's not like they've been around for a decade or something like that. That's actually not the case. So over time, imagine if it slowly became like 2%, 3%, 4%, and so on. In theory, that could maybe create a little bit more stability. It doesn't mean it will, but I'm just saying, who knows in theory. So I think that right there is a good step in the right direction. However, only time will tell. But again, nonetheless, when I saw that update not too long ago, seeing how there's over 600 projects in the Avalanche ecosystem, I was very impressed actually. However, I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward. So hopefully y'all stay tuned for that. I just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very nice day. It's Willie the Captain. I'm out. Peace. Bye.